Hey everyone, welcome back to the second video of Precision 2.0. In this video, we're going to talk a bit about sessions and basically what the purpose of every session is. So we're going to make this color Asia. Actually, let's make it purple. That'll work. We'll make Asia purple. We'll make London green. And well, more or less, these colors will change too. And we'll give New York a different color. Maybe we'll make it blue. Cool. So each session has a role, and it usually goes along the lines of Asia creates liquidity, and ultimately that liquidity is going to be used for London to make its move. Now, the most common thing that we like to see is Asia either smash through and continue on, and maybe New York reverse and aim for these highs, or aim for the lows, I should say. One thing we know for sure is if Asia lows or highs stay intact because price just took off, whatever is left becomes a future target, whether it's for the following session the same day or it is going to happen on a different day. The most common scenario is we get Frankfurt sweeps, and once Frankfurt sweeps, London will push. And then once that happens, one of two things can happen. New York can either continue the move or New York can completely reverse. So New York can continue, or if New York chooses not to continue, it can reverse and run the London lows. So our idea of sessions is understanding that the highs and lows are targets, the highs and lows are liquidity points, and what takes out the highs and lows of each session is actually where the money gets transferred, also known as a flip zone. So with that in mind, I want to talk about a couple of things. And these drawings will be a little less pretty because I want to show you a couple different versions. So if we get Asia that does this, Asia breaks out and leaves this, we're coming back for that liquidity. Whether it's this day, next week, this liquidity has to get taken, and it will. The next thing to remember is Asia can do something what's called the Asia whipsaw. And that's where it'll take the highs and then take the lows, and then the real move begins, whether that's up or it just continues down or it expands twice and then New York makes the real move. Usually if something like this is happening, there's resting liquidity on both sides of Asia. This liquidity is usually previous days or previous weeks' highs and lows. We're going to get into that in the liquidity section, and we'll show you how the sessions tie into that as well. But usually if Asia does something like this, it has a reason to, and the reason's always liquidity. It's looking for liquidity to make the move. So it's very important we pay attention to what Asia does at the highs and the lows. Myself, I trade New York, so I don't get the option of trading Asia. But for those of you guys that trade the Frankfurt Open and into London, the most important thing you want to pay attention to is how Asia reacts when it takes these highs and lows. If we got a candle body close and aggression up, chances are you're just going to continue on that direction. If Asia comes up here and you get a really aggressive reaction and a long wick, basically that's a confluence to go the other way. First place to pay yourself is Asia lows. Now there's a really handy indicator. It's a free indicator by, I think it's Rob Mirlach. So we're going to turn it on, and I'm just going to show you which indicator it is so you guys can get it. I believe it's Asia Yeah, FXN Asian Session Range by Rob Minty. Now we're gonna want to modify his settings a bit. These are the settings I found work good for me. And you can pause this video and change the settings. I'm not going to stay here too long. And basically you want to use these hours. These are kind of your kill zone hours. And these are all set to what I found works. I've moved the New York kill zone over by 1 hour. And I've extended London kill zone by an extra half hour. And in between those zones is actually something called the dead zone. And maybe we'll make that guy, orange. In my time zone, that's an hour and a half window. And what the dead zone is it's basically future liquidity. The banks are not, if it makes a higher low, it's not the banks that put it in, so it'll likely be run. The idea of the dead zone is to understand that your trades are lower probability in this time. We're going to get into that. So let's just look at the actual market itself, and we can kind of discuss how sessions react and where sessions go. Now, what you're going to find is wherever the sessions go, usually they will react in an area that either took out a session or that is a session high or low or is more or less a flip zone. So if I looked at this on the 1 hour, I can tell you right now, this would be the 1 hour flip zone that took the London highs. We react here, price pushes up. And you can kind of see how Asia acted here. We took the highs, aggressive reaction, you can go the other way. We took the lows, once again, you get a wick, you can go the other way. And this can be a really good confluence for trading Asia. For those of you that can trade London, Frankfurt open and London is the easiest time to find a trade because you guys have Asia to work with. New York can be a little bit tricky, but it's also not too bad. Again, we can see here, Asia pushed through. You might have tried sells here. You would have likely got broken even on those, maybe taken partials. We come in here. Where does London get stalled? London runs liquidity and New York high holds. You get a wick. You can turn around and go the other way. Now, if we're going the other way, first place you're going to pay yourself is the London low. Second place you're going to pay yourself is the Asia low. Here we ran the Asia low. I actually took buys from here. I ended up getting stopped out here and got in up here. But my whole basis on this idea was that we took the Asia lows. There was a good possibility this is going to go up, as I was bullish on my bias from this anyway, after it ran major liquidity. And we'll get into that in the liquidity section. Once again, I don't even have to look to the left, but I can tell you that there's a very high probability this either tapped major liquidity or a session high or low or a flip zone that likely took out a session. So here you have a flip zone that took the New York lows. We reacted to it. If you initially seen this reaction and thought it was Asia's liquidity getting taken and it's going down, you're not wrong. That would have been a valid loss. After we came and tapped into this flip zone, filled this imbalance, you get another chance basically to enter. Now, the purpose of all this is understanding how to use sessions. So if we ended up getting up here, first place to pay yourself is Asia lows. If you continue on and decide that you're trading New York and New York's going to continue on, where would I pay myself? London lows. If I decide that for, let's say I was going up and thought that I can hold this, I would definitely pay myself at the New York highs. For those of you that do follow me on Instagram, you did see that I took this trade actually. I paid myself at the imbalance. And I actually kept holding into the next day, partials. And my whole concept is basically understanding how sessions and liquidity work together. So once we understand what sessions truly are, you'll get an idea of how to use them. So Asia is your liquidity draw. London's the main push. New York will either reverse what London did or continue the move. It's important to understand the first hour of London is usually a trap. The first hour in New York is usually a trap, and that's where they manipulate price for liquidity, and then usually the true move happens. Obviously, it's not always within the first hour, but it's a very good rule of thumb that when the sessions start, it's manipulation to take people out, and then the real move. So that again goes back into your session timings. Now, you can see my time zone is UTC -7. We have this little area in here in between London and New York. This is what's known as the dead zone. Anything that gets formed in the dead zone really has no relevance or strength. To me, it's going to get run. So let's say I was holding here. I would have zero issues to try and run the dead zone. You pay yourself here, you pay yourself here. I don't think this one ran it, but the next time you go up, I would have zero issues holding past this and into the dead zone. Because I know that's the dead zone, I know the banks didn't put this in, and I know it's going to have zero strength. So with that in mind, same thing again. If you are holding this short from here, you're going to pay yourself at Asia. When you run the New York low, you can see the dead zone comes below New York. Right here, in a situation like this, I would have no issues holding into running the dead zone because I know the banks didn't put that in, and it will be run. The probability of it holding is not very high. But let's just look into sessions a little bit more. Again, this is a very common and a really nice model when it happens. Frankfurt sweeps, goes the other way, you pay yourself the Asia highs. It's always, not always the way it goes, but it happens a lot. Sweeps Asia, goes the other way. Also tapped into the flip zone that took out New York. Now, if we look at where this reacted, it'll either be a session high or low, or a flip zone that took out a session, or it'll be a major liquidity point, such as the previous day's highs or lows. So in this case here, we are tapping into London. If you look at what part of London we're tapping into, we are tapping into, let's just go. We are tapping into the part of London that is responsible for taking out Asia. Would this be a high probability sell? Yeah. Would I take this? Probably. Whether I get stopped out or break even, I would re-enter this again because I know this is a high probability flip zone because it took out the Asia lows. So if we really start looking at sessions and what took them out, we are going to start understanding that wherever the sessions get taken out, money transfers hands, and these are always reactive zones. Depending if you use body breaks or wicks, some of you might not consider this getting taken out, and some of you might consider this. This would absolutely be a valid short from here again. You could say this is decisional and extreme. These are both valid points. So let's break down sessions a bit more. Here is London smashes right through. Doesn't take Asia liquidity. If you remember at the beginning of the video, we were talking that this is a future target. Now we can see right here, we hit some sort of a liquidity pool and we're going the other way. Let's dissect what it hit. Here we have an Asia low that London failed to sweep. London went up, probably tapped into a session high or low, or major liquidity, or something that took out a session high or low. New York goes down, attempts to sweep Asia lows, but does not. So now you have the lows, and the lows of all three sessions are sitting there. If you see something like that occur, that is automatically a target. If you get into a move anywhere up here, obviously take your partials, but I would have no issues leaving something on the table to run these lows. So from this, as we're going down, I would target this lows. if we're going down from here, we would target these lows. You're always looking at the session lows and highs and what took them out. And what you're going to find too is a lot of times imbalance is present. If you're coming the other way, the first good place to pay yourself is usually where either a session got taken out or where the imbalance ends. So let's dissect this a little more. This one here got respected New York basically. New York here really didn't do much. There might be something in here. We did feel some imbalance here. This could be considered the sell the buy wicks that are responsible for the impulse down here. You could say this is your extreme, and maybe this is your decisional. And what are these OBs responsible for? I would say they started to move or continued the move that took out this low. Once again, you would say this is the absolute extreme. I would probably even go as far as going wick inside a wick on this guy. And you can see how reactive all these points are. Here we take Asia lows and New York lows. We go the other way. When you go the other way, we're using sessions for targeting paying ourselves. I'm going to pay myself, take something off the table here. We get to New York high. I'm going to pay myself, take something off the table here. And as long as you have these things in mind, you kind of know how to pay yourself. You catch a move in here, you're going to pay yourself at the London high, because we know nothing is guaranteed. So we always got to have places to pay ourselves. Some of you may even choose to pay yourself here. That's fine. I like the session lows and highs and the flip zones of the sessions, but you can see this happens over and over. So here, London didn't sweep this liquidity. London pushed down. New York pushed down. New York sweeps the New York low. You get an aggressive reaction. Let's say you take a long here. Where are you going to pay yourself? You're going to pay yourself at the London highs. If you're still holding volume, you're going to pay yourself at the Asia highs. Now, you have more or less equals here, and you have a London low, future target, liquidity. This is either going to hold or it's going to be used as a liquidity point. New York high gets respected. Asia never got swept. This takes Asia. Asia swept liquidity here. If you got into London, pay yourself here. With New York, you would just continue on the move and you would just look left to see where you're going. And there's a very good chance that there's either sessions or session highs and lows or a liquidity point or something you can pay yourself at. But this basically repeats over and over. Now, this right here is what's called a whipsaw, and usually when you see something like that, what it is Asia does something like this. We get the Asia sweep, London sweeps, and then the market sweeps liquidity on both sides. When something like this happens, you know there's a very big move coming. This move didn't happen till next New York session, but what it is this has been, the liquidity's been completely wiped. So now you know when we do make a move, it'll be pretty big and it'll be pretty aggressive, which is what we got here. Also here is an Asia high that doesn't get taken. I don't know if we've taken it yet, but it's definitely a future target if we haven't. No, so we're not there yet, but I know that when we get to this Asia high, it is absolutely a target and absolutely a place to pay yourself. But that's kind of how I use sessions to fit into my plan. Asia's the liquidity, London's the move, New York's either continuation or reversal of London. If it's a reversal, you're going to target the next session. In this case, the two sessions highs are together, more or less equal highs, so you target both. I would absolutely pay myself here. If you look at how sessions print and what they react to, you'll find that the zones that hold are either a session high or low, or the OBs that are responsible for taking out another session high or low. So here we take London low, and you could say something in between this zone to this zone is responsible to it. If you cycle through, half hour, 1 hour, you might get a cleaner POI. But you would know that if you were being really greedy and you decided not to pay yourself, which I hope you don't do, you would not try to hold past this without taking something off the table, because the chance of the market just running through this without a reaction is next to none, as this OB took out a session low. So the banks were present here, and it also happened during our session timings that matter. So that's kind of how I use sessions. Now, if we tie this into the weekly cycle, it can again add confluence. If you have a direction from 4 hour or daily on what you want to do, you could see how the session's printed, where the liquidity lies, and what the market's done. And this can just ultimately aid you in your analysis to make sure that you have extra confluence to go that direction or not. And the biggest thing, again, in sessions is watching how the session highs and lows react. So here we take the highs, big wick. We run the lows, you start getting these wicks. That's a pretty good sign going the other way. You run the lows here, again, big wick, pretty good sign to go the other way. Run the highs here, big wick, pretty good sign to go the other way. So anytime a session high or low is taken, we really care about that reaction. Now, if price came through here with one solid candle, I would be looking to continue on up, and I would continue on up till this session high goes. And that's kind of how I view the market. So I'm always aware in the morning of what each session did, where the liquidity lies. If there's Tokyo liquidity that hasn't been taken, it gets marked and it's a target. So just make sure you add sessions into your supply and demand. They're a huge role, and I don't know how much truth there is behind this theory, but one of my old mentors taught me that session highs or lows, and what took out the sessions highs and lows is how the banks around the world communicate with each other. So Tokyo will print something, Frankfurt will take over, Frankfurt will print something, London will take over, New York will take over from that point, but they all leave something for the other banks. And the only thing the banks really have to work with is they obviously have a long-term projection from fundamentals and interest rates and key events, but within the market itself on a daily basis, they got to have a way of communicating with each other. And what was taught to me is that session highs and lows is how the banks communicate with each other, and they have these key points that how they print a session and what the session did are these, they leave clues for other banks. So basically JP Morgan in Tokyo doesn't screw JP Morgan in New York kind of deal. And again, don't know the validity of that story, but it really makes sense to me. And as I've started trading the session lows and highs more, noticed my trading's improved a lot, and I've been taking less trades but higher quality ones, and that's ultimately what we're all about. So yeah, we'll end this one here, and I will see you guys in the next video.